Вітаю всіх, мене звати Володимир Kudelya, я менеджер проєктів CEDEM і я радий вітати вас на презентації.
Good morning, I'm Volodymyr Kudelya. I'm very glad to see you all at the presentation of the guide of CSOs on artificial intelligence tools. Thank you very much everyone who joined us online. Thank you very much for the attention to this event and to the use of these tools in CSO. So that is within initiative support of CSOs of Ukraine, and also it is made with a few of our partners and with the support of USA. Also, I would like to thank all the military forces and defense of Ukraine, all volunteers who make this event possible by defending the sovereignty of Ukraine. Also, I wanted to tell you that in the case of air raid siren, we are not going to interrupt this event, but it will be your personal responsibility. What should you do? To go to shelter or not? Also, I would like to welcome everyone who joined us online. Frachesca Fanucci joined us today, who is the Chief Legal Advisor of ECNL. Ihor Rozkladai is also with us, who is the Deputy Director of CEDEM. Olga Petriv, who is the lawyer of CEDEM, and Tetyana Avdeeva, who is the lawyer of the Lab for Security, for Digital Security. You know, we had no doubt who shall we invite for this guide presentation, because only thanks to these people we have this guide. You know, we had a conference last year and we realized how valuable are the findings of this conference about artificial intelligence organized by CEDEM. Today, we can see more and more attention to the use of artificial intelligence in Ukraine. For instance, now there are plenty educational courses regarding artificial intelligence. They are initiated by the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and not only. But what's the complexity of this discussion? It initiated the question, where is the civil society in the topic of the AI? What CSOs should do with this tool? That's exactly what our speakers discussed, and that's exactly what was covered by our guide, what Ukrainian CSOs can do with AI tools, how they can be used, and what are the most valuable funding for the human rights and other rights. Let's try to cover this spectrum of topics. So there are more than 50 pages in this guide, 6 main sections. We were working on it for a few months because our task was not just tell you what our speakers found, but also to make a lot of links to let the readers of the guide the possibility to get acquainted with the articles on these topics. For instance, in the guide there are a couple of pages of bibliography with the materials prepared by CEDEM. And there are a few blogs in this guide. It's about generative AI. Second blog, Olga Petriv's blog, practical use of AI in the work of CSOs. After that, based on Ihor Rozkladai presentation, deepfakes and shallow fakes, how can we use them, what are the threats, and how we can use them for neutral purposes. The next block is about facial recognition technique, how it works, what are the risks connected to it, and what about regulation of this technology used in Ukraine and in Europe. And here I would like to give the floor to Frachesca Fanucci, who was developing this guide together with us.
These technologies raises important human rights issues, privacy. What are the core risks and and how should civil society respond to them, in your opinion?
Thank you, Volodymyr. Thank you, CEDEM, and thank you so much for inviting me. I was really honored to cooperate with you in the preparation of this guide for civil society organizations. And now, you asked me essentially to deal with which steps the Ukrainian CSOs should take to minimize the risks to human rights violations from using facial recognition technology. Now, as you will see in the guide, or maybe you have already seen, there are different types of facial recognition technologies, but what they all have essentially in common is that they are trained to measure facial biometric data, which are the unique characteristics of that identify us as individuals, such as the iris, the symmetry, the skin tone, etc. And then they compare this data with another set of data, a database with facial images, which are also called biometric templates, in order to establish positive matches or negative matches. You are or you are not the person in that database. Now, after they have been trained on this initial data set, what happens is that the technology becomes capable of identifying consistent elements or patterns. This is the peculiar characteristics of artificial intelligence, that it learns how to identify these similarities by itself, and it gains a certain level of autonomy and adaptability. Now, all AI facial recognition technologies can work either in real time, so they can conduct this operation of identification live, but they can also do it retrospectively. They can be used by capturing, for example, recording images, keeping them there, and confronting them later with a set of database. Now, one of the most common uses of these FRT, we call them, is when they are installed indeed in CCTV cameras in public spaces or in publicly accessible spaces. For example, shopping malls or private passages that are open to the public, entrance to public or private buildings, and so on. So one of the most common uses for which these FRT are advocated is law enforcement. Now, following the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, in March 2022, the Ukrainian government, as we all know, announced the cooperation with the US company Clearview AI to identify, so essentially to use their system to identify people by using a database of images that Clearview AI had previously scraped from the internet, from social media platforms, for example. And we understand that the government has used it to identify, for example, potential Russian soldiers infiltrating the territory, but also to identify, to distinguish civilians from military personnel, or to identify deceased Russian soldiers to be able to inform the families, or similar cases like this. Now, why am I talking about this? Because depending on the purpose of and the context, of course, in which these technologies are used, the risks and violations of human rights can be varied and multifold. Now, one of the first risks is the risk of false identification or missed identification, what we call false positive and false negatives. Because we have to remember that no matter how precise these machines are, the algorithm never produces results. They produce probabilities. So when a large number of people's images are checked in mass, say, for example, in a crowded street, in a square during a protest, or during a, usual traffic day, even if the risk of a false positive is reduced to 1%, for example, we're still talking about big numbers. For example, 100 people out of 10,000 demonstrators in 100 people falsely identified, especially if you identify them to arrest them, for example, or in the case of a war to shoot them, could be. So depending on the purpose, once again, a false identification and risk for that person is higher. And another element that I also always like to point to is that even if we further reduce the margin of error, this machine works in such a way that, for example, if you reduce the margin of error for false positives, so let's say that you have hardly any chance to mistake a person for another, automatically the margin of error for false negative increases. It means that if the machine can almost, 100% identify the right person, it will have a higher margin of error to miss the identification on other people. And you can't have it both ways. Either you are more precise on false negatives and automatically you become less precise on false positives, or the other way around. So ultimately, it's up to the authorities to decide what they want to achieve, what kind of balance. So you can imagine that in the context of a war, this means that there is an even more serious danger that FRT systems that wrongly identify people may be fatal. They can lead even to the wounding or shooting of wrong people. So another element that can affect the value of these technologies is the higher error rates can influence the bias. These machines, the quality of the image, for example, the light, the poor quality of the data set, usually lead to wrong identification based on the color of the skin, on the age, the gender, and this has been the case even in normal conditions, not in wartime. So when the Ukrainian government was offered the opportunity to use Clearview AI, it was also offered a database created by the company to check these images. And now, as you probably know already, several authorities, in data protection authorities in the EU, established that these images had been collected in violation of norms protecting privacy, like the GDPR. But another problem that we envisage here is that, there was no prior involvement of the Ukrainian government itself or representative of civil society in checking if this technology was either effective or effectively needed, or if it needed to be adapted, for example, to the local context. You just received the blind package and you started using it, and there was no guarantees, no safeguards on how it would actually effectively protect the Ukrainian people. So, and also another problem is that once, you start using the technology for a purpose, you like it, you start thinking, even when the war is over, I could use it for something else. I could use it for ordinary identification. I could use it for merely law enforcement, or I could use it, for example, for facial recognition of citizens online via their phone if they want to access their services. For example, they want to pay taxes, they want to access online services provided by the government. I'm going to set up facial recognition and I'm going to use this technology. So there is an irresistible temptation to start diversifying. And that's where, for different purposes, we advocate different risk and impact assessments that have to be conducted. So the recommendations that we could give is that, once again, there are, even if you are at war, you have a martial law at the moment, and indeed, the international standards do acknowledge that in times of emergency, there are justified higher restrictions to freedoms of the people. You still have to be very careful that the purpose is just for what it is established for, that specific, strictly necessary need to solve the problem created by the law. By the war. Once the war is over, for example, those cameras that were established for war reasons, for checking soldiers, they have to be removed. If they want to be used again, there has to be another brand new impact assessment with the involvement of the relevant representatives of civil society in checking what they are needed for, how long they are used, what kind of data sets you're going to use, how long that they are going to be kept, where they're going to be kept, and so on. So ultimately, we agree with our colleagues from CEDEM and Digital Security Lab that, especially all the more so as now Ukraine is a candidate to EU accession, and so hopefully you will soon join the EU. Hopefully, not only you will win the war, but you will join the EU as a proper member. You will have to comply with the standards of the GDPR, but also of the incoming AI Act. And so the Ukrainian government needs a robust legal framework applicable to the different uses of facial recognition technologies. And it should include, for sure, civil society in the impact assessment of these technologies before their deployment. I would also like to finish briefly, I hope I did not abuse my time for too long, but I would like to point to the fact that aside from this AI Act that is, its final text is expected to be published tomorrow and then approved by the European Parliament at the next session. But the countries of the Council of Europe, including Ukraine, are currently negotiating a convention, a global convention on AI, human rights and democracy. And my colleagues at CEDEM, Digital Security Lab, know about it well because they recently joined as observers as well as us. So one thing that I would like to point out is that, unfortunately, both the AI Act on the one hand and this incoming convention are excluding AI systems used for national defense and for national security from their scope of application. So this doesn't mean that there are no international human rights standards that apply to these technologies. There remain, for example, the European Convention on Human Rights. The problem is that obviously this is an attempt to try and limit the safeguards of these technologies when used in this specific context. So we advocate that civil society has to be even more attentive and call for safeguards, at least at national level, to protect themselves and to assess the risks that may entail from the use of these technologies for national defense and national security. So I'm finished now. I'm happy to take questions if there are any, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Frachesca, for these highlights on the risks and the need for regulation. Tetyana, в контексті цього ми...
Tetyana, so now, in this context, notwithstanding the existing risks, we can see these statements like last week when Prime Minister of Ukraine, Shmyhal, told about the need to use 50,000 cameras. As Frachesca said, within the cooperation of Ukrainian government with Clearview AI. So, how we should react to this kind of threatening precedents? Very interesting topic indeed. But you know, it's not a fresh topic. When I was working in CEDEM in 2019-2020, I already made research on those cameras. They were used already, but now the scale and the use of this project is changing, because before there were self-government bodies were using them. Kyiv regional administration or some local authorities, they gave some kind of regulations. You know, there is a law on local self-governments, and actually in the law there are no rights for them to have a kind of surveillance on the streets. So they did it against the allowed discretion. But after they were being criticized from CSOs, Ministry of Internal Affairs decided to make Safe Country initiative. Within this initiative, it was possible to integrate all local database, all facial recognition technologies, and coordinate it on the level of the ministry. But it didn't solve the problem with local self-government bodies. I remember a lot of discussions were going on at that time with CSO.
КП «Інформатика» – це ті, хто адмініструє ці процеси, деякі безпосередньо були з представниками Міністерства внутрішніх справ. Вирішити це питання якимось чином в 2021 році не вдалося. В 2022 трохи сподівалися, що це
It was a bit stuck. We hope that's how it will go. But large-scale invasion started. And now when I can see the renewal of this initiative, unfortunately, there are no proposal how to provide state guarantees to safeguard it. Now we are talking about technological system, integration of technological systems. It is just technical, but not legislative regulation, and there is no guarantee that it won't be used for abusing the rights, or no regulation of facial recognition technologies. So when law enforcement bodies are taking decision to give it to court, there are no mechanisms how to do it. Criminal penal code doesn't regulate these issues. That's a dangerous initiative. We do not understand what to do if we have problems with it. I mean, us as citizens. Also, regarding surveillance cameras, there were a lot of talks at the level of EU. And in CEDEM, one of our topics is European integration. So I want to ask, when we access the EU, take into account that artificial intelligence is very cautious about the treatment of biometrical data in real time. Would it impact our Euro integration, its quality, its speed, and how we can change it after?
Це одна річ.
You know, I don't want the situation when we access the EU and in 6 months we start regulating this issue. But also there are multiple issues involved here as well that needed to be discussed. Thank you very much, Tetyana. Igor, what about you? What would you offer in this situation? How it is connected to deep fake, to shallow fakes you are dealing with? It's also connected to surveillance cameras, actually. Good day, Alex. You know, it's a very interesting day. Today we are discussing the safety of the public sector of media. Because it's very nice to remind ourselves that any kind of changes shall take into account the historical legal aspect of the country they implemented. And discussing AI, we need to understand it's a very powerful tool. And we don't know where it will bring us. But already there are memes with Connor from Terminator doing something bad for the humankind. Also, we need to understand that it will change the economics, it will change our existence. Probably it's a good thing, because progress pushes people forward to new things. But take into account our problems with climate, with water, other problems, AI can help us a lot. AI can help us a lot. But it's a tool that has positive sides, negative sides, and we already have problems connected to it. Regarding cameras, I had a post regarding it, and in the comments there was a very funny comment. So in some company, first they installed surveillance camera for business purposes, but then they decided at work why the wives of the employees were cheating them with other employees. Well, that's funny, but let's remember that that what would be if we had such surveillance camera during Maidan. That time it already started in Mariinsky Park and Grushevskoho Street. Can you imagine if there were cameras who could identify you clearly? All the data with your address, it would finish in completely different ways. That's why camera technology should be regulated very well. There should be very limited time of keeping this data. Otherwise, that's a way to China, to their police state, when policeman knows everything about you already. And I really don't want to live in the totalitarian state again. On the other side, how it impacts all of us. We can see that CSOs are suffering already from it. We can see it in social media. Frachesca already mentioned that, and that's one of the main problems happening in Facebook. When there are some innocent posts, there is a head of Bruce Willis. And you know, there was a meme with bald Bruce Willis, and the reason for violation was the nudity, probably because of his baldness. And it shows us that algorithms are very far from perfection, and even moderation in social media. That's you need a few violations to lose all your data, all your contacts, all your posts, and that's serious in our time. Also, that is a problem of choices. Let's look at the election of election in America, they showed that very rough videos can cheat a lot of people. And you know, that's a very simple technology, for instance, slowing the video for 25%, but people believe it. And we had this similar deepfake with Zelensky. In 2023 was a deepfake with Zaluzhny, because that Zaluzhny deepfake was more qualitative, and I was scared to see that, how quick this technology is being improved. Also, from the beginning of New Year, there is a lot of advertisement of medicine without proven effect. Yesterday, for instance, I even saw a priest in the advertisement of some prostate medicine. And you could see very well that is the use of AI, because the video doesn't correspond to what they ask you to buy. So the risks are rather serious. But also there are opportunities, not just risks. First of all, opportunities to generate visual content. And together with Deutsche Welle Academy, we will working on a guide on media, and we generated all the images for this guide with AI. Also, let's remember how popular are avatars at the moment. These visual tools allow us to communicate with our audience better, to create some new content needed to achieve our goals. Also, they can help us to process big data and to do it much quicker than before. AI is just a tool, and I agree with my colleagues that that's exactly how we should treat it. Just to put some safeguards where there is a serious threat to privacy, to life, to safety of people. Yeah, we can use it to help us. We can use it to look for the images of violators, for instance. That's a rather smart, balanced approach that will let us to interact with this event. And for sure, we need to continue working on it and make a constant risk assessment. The separate topic is ownership rights. It's not very easy, even without it. In our Ukrainian legislation, there is already some provisions on it. We have the provision sui generis already for that. And it doesn't matter who is using it, an individual or CSO. First of all, they need to understand very well it's not a true image. It was generated by AI, which will allow us to avoid memes that can be insulted for many people in the context of a war. You know that the most important to let the consumer to understand that these images are not real. You know, we are just in a new era. Welcome to the 21st. and we start working with new risks. But when we cooperate on that, I'm sure we will succeed. Igor, thank you very much. Colleagues, thank you very much for sticking to your time. We were talking about the guide. So Igor, you talked about this guide with images generated by AI. And you haven't seen our guide yet because it will be published just today, but that's exactly what we did for our guide. We also generated them with AI. By that, we wanted to show the possibilities of AI, not just threats. Igor, thank you very much for talking about challenges and opportunities in your speech. And now I would like to give a word to Olga Petriv, because her part of the guide is about positive sides of AI tools. Olga, tell us about, please. Where can we use it? Where it is used already? Hello, everyone. You know, now we see how different tools of AI, Ukrainian startups, replaced speech, other ones, involve a lot of investments to develop their products. Ukrainian startups are changing the reality, and that's wonderful. CEDEM and many people consider AI tools necessary for their everyday life. Those who do not use it are already behind the others. That's why remember about it. Study how to use these tools in practice, and everyone can do it. Exactly, that's why in our guide you can find step-by-step instruction how to do it. At the moment, AI tools is being used for content creation because it can help to generate new, unique images. Also, it learns all the time on our images and on our requests. Where to go, which button to push, all this information you will find in our guide. You know, there are many people who, for instance, are making presentation and it takes a lot of time. But AI can help you to do it within minutes. At the same time, the same way, you can make the making of your content easier, just within minutes, the same as video content. We understand that some people want to ignore these tools or see just the risks of these tools, and that is the first thing we want you to know before using these guides. Please read the guides completely till the last page to understand the risks for personal data distribution, distribution of content created by AI, about ownership rights connected to it. But at the same time, you need to understand the risks of doing that when you don't do it, or at least when you do not get acquainted with it. You know, it might look at the risky process, but it response, we should understand what you do, we should start doing it step by step, slowly. You will succeed. It will be like this with ChatGPT. Now, a lot of people is using it and it helps them a lot in their working life. But also there are the different versions of ChatGPT on appear faster.
Для цього ми рекомендуємо ознайомлюватися з усіма оновленнями тих програм, оскільки Hyde – це дійсно дуже корисна штука, річ, яку можна буде застосовувати для свого щоденного створення контенту. І тому в самому Hyde ви можете знайти як інформацію щодо створення презентацій, щодо самих чат-ботів, щодо створення діаграм, оскільки багато людей вони створюють контент і намагаються його викласти так, щоб він був максимально доступно зображений читачеві, і це дійсно візуальне сприйняття, воно є досить важливим для усіх. Так само це перегляд і аналіз відео. Можливо, вже хтось застосовував, якщо ні, то також рекомендуємо це зробити, оскільки
if you didn't try it yet, because time is the most valuable resource. Can you hear me now, Francesca? Yes, okay, great. So, if you didn't use it for video analysis and review, please try to do it because it's very convenient and useful. Also, there are other chatbots now. Perplexity, for instance. This Perplexity, it just appeared. And it's better to get acquainted with it. But our guide will be kind of foundation for you, and after that you can start learning more deeply. So in our guide you can find information which chatbots are actual at the moment. We need to understand that they are becoming better and better. They have plenty of new functions. So if you use our guide as the basis, you will know everything you need to know about AI tools and how to use them in your work. Regarding automatization, that's the generation of the content, and at the same time, I wanted you to have a look at section regarding photo and video, and all of them, and also there are other tools that are doing with transcription of the text, which takes a lot of time. And not just time, but our creative resource as well, because during some brainstorms, you do not storm all the time because you need to put down something. And now with AI tool, you can concentrate on a creative process completely. After getting acquainted with our guide, you can renew information yourself. Generation, automation, and use in your work. For instance, if you're working in CSO, you can use it in all the areas. You can apply for grants with the help of AI tools. You can always tell ChatGPT what kind of personality it should be in the process. Also, I would like to remind you about other materials that we have developed in CEDEM with different life hacks. If someone is using ChatGPT and wants it to be more responsive to generate better information, promise ChatGPT you will pay it. That's paradox, but you know it works. So regarding the guide itself, that's all. And I wanted to urge you to know more about AI innovations, and the ones who have them are one step ahead of all others. Thank you very much. You know, I asked Bard AI, Google tool. No, Olga asked ChatGPT, does she know about the Bard? Does it know about Bard? And ChatGPT told, no, I don't know Bard.
Дякую, Олі, дякую, колеги. Можливо, є якісь запитання у людей в залі щодо цього, щодо нашого...
Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you very much, colleagues. Maybe someone in the audience have questions. If I may. A little question and little comment, please. Ihor Rozkladai, the head of the Project of Information Defense of the Ministry of Sports, Youth and Culture. And I also was at Maidan. I'm very grateful to you for such an important research. In our organization, we are also trying to implement AI. First of all, AI is making recording of our meetings. And also when I write articles, I dictate it and ChatGPT makes me a text. Also, I would like to say that at UKR Forum in December 9, there was a news that in the European Union there was an agreement about basic regulation of AI on facial recognition technologies. And I asked the Ukrainian government about it because, as Tetyana rightly said, it can be our constraint or our help on our way to Europe. So I asked Ukrainian government about that law, and I've been answered that the Ministry of Digital Transformation is doing with that. I don't know, did you have any kind of consultations with Ministry of Transformation? Because I think we shall start regulating these issues already, because there are a lot of moral and ethical problems connected to it. European Union, United States are discussing it all the time. It's not just the issue of privacy or non-privacy. And by the way, there was a terroristic attack in Berlin like 1.5 years ago. Also, there was a similar situation in Nice. And they found the perpetrators by using facial recognition technique. But I don't want these technologies to work just in the developed countries, because we know very well that in the totalitarian countries there are these technologies as well. Because we have a lot of problems with that as well. I personally, for instance, my car to help our government. We can help them to regulate it. So my question to you, Olga, about this ChatGPT who wants payment for his work. Does he really need some kind of payment, and how do you pay it? No, you don't need to pay. You know, you just say that it's kind of life hack, and it starts working better. because, it learns from people, and people work better when they're being paid. Regarding the law, me, Tetyana, our organizations and committees are shaping the law at the moment. And the next step is publication of the white paper, white book, and there will be our findings, and the law will correspond to the act which has been taken now at the level of European Union. So regarding legislation, we are developing this issue very actively, actually. I can't hear the voice from the audience. It is within Ministry of Digital Transformation, but it's kind of advisory body. Thank you very much for the questions. Any other questions?
Дуже важливо саме ця узгодження з актом. Так, прошу наступне питання.
Yeah, it's very important to correspond our law to the European Act. Олег Ямчук.
Весь документообіг між держслужбовцями і населенням, і де-факто
we have a lot of document flow between population and bodies. And gradually it becomes a part of this process.
Мене як МГО це не цікавить. У вас нема питань стратегії. От дивіться, на сьогоднішній день...
Do you have any strategical issues on that? What do I mean? At the moment, we need a kind of intellectual agents, chatbots. Can you see the strategy? What you have, that's very cool, but if we Google it, we can find this information, we can find all these life hacks. So, intellectual chatbots, anti-corruption, how we can reinforce these topics with the help of AI. Our partners in Cambridge, for instance, are dealing with anti-corruption activities all over the world, and it's very interesting in the context of AI. Sorry, who do you ask? If AI can help us to fight the corruption, or will become its part. Well, yeah, when we have an event, I'm being asked about environment, anti-corruption, and why we are not dealing with these issues. We are open for cooperation. It's cool that you have ideas, that you have visions. We just have other tasks. Guide in general is a kind of general tool that can be used in any sector. If you're talking about some sector development, National Agency of Public Servants had a brilliant idea how to use AI for declarations of civil servants. That's a more narrow work, and they need other narrow tools. If we just want CSO to be more literate in the new technologies, that's one task. But if we want to work in anti-corruption, in environment, in education, so on and so forth, we are talking about the tools of other level. Regarding the strategy, it's a good idea. It is being developed on the level of the state, on the level of the academies, for instance, on the level of CSO as well. It is a question of time, resources, and where do we start? First of all, we need to make literal the wider audience. our population, how we can use it in some daily routine. And then we'll go to some specific topics. Also, I would like to add that these processes are parallel. You can use the tools that we have for your tasks, but coming back to regulation of this issue, we shall have a kind of framework. There should be some protective mechanisms, protective measures, higher risks for life. These are just different tasks. You know, for instance, I see quite often, I don't know why, advertisements of drones that work in the fields. So in the specific sectors, people are using AI already. People react to the development faster than states do. And regarding the corruption, you know, still you will see some privacy elements on it. Because if someone has the same surname as corruptioner, AI will help you to protect yourself from that. Well, that should be safeguarded. Everyone has something to do. Our task is to give you a fishing rod, but which fish are you going to fish with that? That's up to you. De facto, are there laws or no laws? But AI is going to do with document flow. Why are you talking about cameras? I have a de facto question. There is no document flow. If there is no paper document flow, there is no corruption. You cannot use the tools before it is in the laws of Ukraine, because it is the constitution of Ukraine. And exactly that's why we highlight how important it is to develop legislation. And the guide is talking about the risks, about opportunities, and we should look at this problem as total, not to focus on one of the components. At the same time as the strategies and legislation. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank all of you for your presentation. Maybe you would put our QR codes on the slides. Here on this QR code, you could download the guide. Also, you can take a part in a survey what you would be interested in this topic. Trainings or something else. Annual conference we are going to have on artificial intelligence. We are very thankful to our partners, the SLab, CEDEM, ECNL. We are very grateful to our project and USAID to make this guide and this event possible. And at the end, I would like to tell you that I love metaphor that Ihor said about the tools that can be used for good things and for bad things, for autocratic regimes. And only we can decide how to control these tools and to limit their abuse. Instead, we can implement them in such a way to work actively in good direction. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much, dear speakers, and see you on the next event.